Hi, I am Seraphina. My sister's vicious plot to erase my legacy and my parents' heartless betrayal to silence my worth shattered our family. Yet, their deceit only forged my unyielding resolve to reclaim what's rightfully mine. I thought I was the cornerstone of my family's legacy, but on one devastating Labor Day, they branded me invisible and nearly stole my future with a single, calculated betrayal. Ever been betrayed by the people you loved the most and had to choose between justice or peace? Before we dive in, what time are you watching this and where from? Let us know in the comments. I read everyone. It was a Saturday in late summer when I found out my family had thrown a party without me. I was coming back from a client site east of Phoenix, Arizona, when I drove past my parents' house on Canyon Breeze Lane. Balloons fluttered in the breeze. Cars lined both sides of the curb, and a professionally printed banner read, "Celebrating Our Pillar, Isolda's 12 years leading Thornton Logistics." Isolda. Not our parents, not the family, just her. I parked 2 houses down and sat still behind the wheel. I didn't know what stung more, the fact that I hadn't been invited or the fact that I wasn't surprised. Growing up, I used to believe things would balance out, that hard work would be noticed, that if I just kept showing up, helping, making the right choices, I'd matter. But lately, being invisible wasn't just a phase. It felt intentional. For years, I endured Isolda's barbed taunts, her smug superiority at every family gathering, slicing through my resolve, as if my contributions were a personal affront to her empire. "You'll never be enough," Isolda had sneered at a past holiday, her words now a festering wound. I drove away before someone spotted me. At home, I pulled out a plastic bin of old keepsakes I'd been meaning to organize. It was mostly yellowed report cards, faded concert tickets, a woven keychain from 4th grade. But near the bottom, I found the gold hairpin. It was engraved with a single letter, S. My mother gave it to me for my 18th birthday. She'd said, "As long as you wear it, I'll always see you as unbreakable." At the time, it made me feel like I mattered, that she saw me. "You're our rock," she'd whispered then, her voice now a lie exposed by her silence. Now, I wasn't so sure. I put it back in its silk pouch and slid it under some autumn scarves, not ready to decide what to do with that yet. That night, while reheating leftover stir-fry, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said to answer. "Seraphina," a male voice said. "This is Winston Carver. I was your parents' estate attorney." I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but I've been meaning to follow up on the trust transition paperwork. You never returned your copy." I frowned. "What paperwork?" There was a pause. "It was sent 4 months ago, certified mail to your apartment address in—" "I never received anything," I said. "Would you have a moment to meet in person?" he asked. "I think we need to review a few things together." "You're too trusting, Seraphina," a colleague's warning from months ago echoed, now laced with ominous truth. "Isolda's been scheming," a friend had warned last spring, her voice now a haunting echo. The next morning I went to the post office. The clerk checked the forwarding history on my mailbox. Apparently my name had been temporarily removed due to a change of service form signed digitally by my sister. "I'm sorry," the woman said. "It says the address was updated to Isolda Thornton's name only." I didn't respond. I just nodded and walked back to my car, my ears ringing. "Isolda's been asking about your role," Mom had hinted last year, her voice trembling with unease. "She's erasing you," the clerk's sympathetic glance seemed to say, fueling my resolve. I showed up at Mr. Carver's office by noon. He greeted me with a wary look and led me to a quiet conference room with blinds drawn halfway. "I want to be clear," he began. "What I'm showing you today is based on your parents' most recent instructions, but it may surprise you." He laid a copy of the current trust documents on the table. The signatures were real. The notary seal was there. My parents had legally signed over every piece of family property, land and company share, to Isolde. "All of it?" I whispered. "I know this is difficult," he said, "but I thought you'd seen this before." I shook my head slowly. "Mr. Carver, in the older version, was I included?" He nodded. Yes. As co-beneficiary, that version is still in our records. Unless they formally revoked it, it should still... He paused, stood up, and walked over to his safe. With careful hands, he removed a cream envelope, thick and sealed with a silver sticker. This, he said, was meant for you. It's dated 8 months before the new documents. Your parents dropped it off themselves. I stared at it, suddenly aware of how cold my hands felt. Why didn't I ever get this? He sighed. Your sister picked it up the day you were supposed to. Said she'd deliver it. She betrayed you, Carver said softly, his voice heavy with sympathy. She wanted you erased. Isolde lied to us all, he added, his tone grave. She's been plotting this for years. Of course she did. I broke the seal with a slow rip and unfolded the letter inside. My eyes scanned the first line and my stomach dropped. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until the page trembled in my hand. The letter inside that envelope? It wasn't just sentimental, it was legal. A notarized copy of the original trust document, clear as day, naming me as 60% co-owner of our parents' real estate and their retirement fund, dated 16 months ago. My mother's signature, my father's too, and then, in the margin, a neat sticky note in Mr. Carver's handwriting. For Seraphina, copy retained. I sat in stunned silence as he quietly stood up to give me a moment. 16 months ago. That was before Isolde moved back into the house after her third divorce, before the sudden bi-weekly family dinners I was no longer invited to, before I started wondering if I was slowly being pushed out or if I'd simply began fading on my own. I'll give you time with it, Mr. Carver said gently, placing a glass of water beside me. Take it home in Seraphina. Don't rush to respond. Process first. You're stronger than they think, he added, his voice firm. Don't let them define you. You're their reckoning, he said, his eyes fierce with belief. Stand tall. I thanked him, the words barely forming. As I drove home, the letter sat on the passenger seat like a weight. My fingers kept twitching, itching to call someone. But who? My parents? My sister? I wasn't ready to scream. Not yet. At home, I sat on the edge of my couch, letter still in hand, and did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Not the kind of sobbing that comes from heartbreak, but that hollow, cold cry that comes when you realize something wasn't an accident. It was a choice, a strategy, a decision you weren't even invited to weigh in on. You're all I have left, Mom's voice echoed from a past call, now a lie exposed by her silence. You were always enough. Dad's promise from years ago rang hollow, now a betrayal unveiled. In between tears, I started writing down numbers. I'd been the one helping them pay off the second mortgage after the market crash. $92,500, 0 cents in all, across 7 years. That included the emergency HVAC repair, the new siding, and the surprise property tax bill in 2022. Every time I'd helped, my mother called it a family favor. You're wasting your life giving to them, a friend's warning rang, now a bitter truth. They're using you, a coworker had said last year, her words now a painful truth. Apparently, those favors didn't come with a seat at the table. Later that afternoon, I drove out to my dad's auto repair shop. The place looked just as it had for 25 years. Same corrugated siding, same squeaky front doorbell. I hadn't visited in months. Dad was sitting behind the counter flipping through invoices. He looked up and gave me a polite, neutral smile. No warmth, just recognition. Didn't expect you today, he said. I shrugged. Thought I'd say hi. The air was thick with motor oil and distance. My eyes drifted to the back wall. The founder's plaque we had installed 12 years ago. I'd designed it myself. It used to list my name beside Isolde's under our parents, but now the gold strip under founders had only 3 names. Mine was gone. I walked closer, pretending to admire the shine. Was the plaque updated? He didn't look up. Isolde's been helping more lately. She's earned it. I bit the inside of my cheek, Hard. So erasing someone's name now counts as a promotion. He shrugged. You moved out, you're doing your own thing. You're a disappointment, Seraphina, he'd said years ago, his words now a silent dismissal. You're nothing without Isolde, he'd hinted at a past dinner, his voice now a cold rejection. Right, my own thing. Paying their mortgage, managing logistics across 6 states, living without recognition. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. You'll never be Isolde, his voice echoed from a past argument, now a wound reopened. You're just a shadow, his past taunt resounded, now a spur to my fight. That evening back home, I sat at my kitchen table and pulled up the Maricopa County Clerk's online portal. I typed in my parents' address and clicked through the deed history. There it was. 4 months ago, the house had been legally transferred to Isolde Thornton. No mention of joint owner, no trust, just a clean, quiet change. And then I found the second document, the transfer of our father's share in the family storage facility lot, also to Isolde. No announcement, no discussion. So that's why the lawyer reached out. Legally, he had to notify anyone listed in a previous trust before the change could be finalized. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd tried to hide it. I'd spent months dreading this truth, knowing Isolde had been plotting to erase me, her whispers poisoning our parents' minds. She's stealing your life, a friend's warning echoed, now a call to action. I walked outside, the estate document still in my hand, the edges crumpling under my grip. I sat down on the curb, right near the mailbox, and looked at my name in the letter again. Clear, formal, valid. They erased me on paper, I muttered aloud, because they thought I wouldn't fight. My phone buzzed in my lap, a message from Isolde. Don't make this messy. You were never meant to have it anyway. You're nothing without me. Her voice taunted from a past call, now a cruel confirmation. You're a burden, Seraphina. Her text from last year flashed, now a blatant challenge. That line wasn't just cruel. It confirmed everything. And it lit a fire in me. I stared at that message from Isolde until the screen dimmed. Not from shock, I'd already been through that, but from something colder, heavier, resignation mixed with resolve. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed with the lamp on, rereading the trust papers, the texts, and my notes. And I made a decision. Monday morning rolled in with the same bright Arizona sun that had warmed my childhood, except now it felt surgical. I didn't do my hair, I didn't wear perfume, I didn't even bother with the homemade salsa my mom always expected me to bring. Instead, I picked up a store-bought tart and a bottle of cheap white wine. No handwritten note, no love baked in, just enough to fulfill the unspoken requirement of bring something. Their driveway was already packed by the time I pulled up. A few of the church friends I recognized were milling about in pastel cardigans and floral blouses, chatting with Isolde near the door. She looked like she'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Hair curled, dress fitted, laughter just loud enough to command attention. I waited until the conversation shifted before approaching. Isolde turned, smiled tightly. Oh, you made it! I nodded, handing her the tart. Door was out of your favorite, so I improvised. You don't belong here, her eyes seemed to say, her smile a calculated mask. She took it with a manicured hand, eyes flicking to my outfit, plain slacks and a teal blouse. Nothing to critique, nothing to praise, neutral. Inside, the house smelled like cornbread and jasmine air freshener, familiar but sterile. My mother was in the kitchen, directing a teenager I didn't know around the serving trays, probably a church volunteer. She saw me and clasped her hands together. It's so nice to have both my girls here, she cooed, eyes lingering on Isolde, especially the one who's been here through thick and thin. You're always so reliable, Seraphina, she'd said at a past gathering, her tone now a lie exposed. Isolde's the daughter we need, she'd whispered last Easter, her words now a dagger in my heart. I swallowed. Not anger, not hurt, just data. A line filed away in the growing case folder in my mind. Lunch was buffet style. I served myself last, took the smallest portion, and made my way toward the corner armchair, but Isolde gestured to the dining room. "We saved you a seat at the big table," she said, voice sugar-coated. "Just for today," Mom chimed in behind her. "You've always preferred the couch, though." "You're embarrassing yourself," Isolde's voice echoed from a past jab, now a calculated slight. "You're not one of us," Mom's glance implied, her smile a betrayal unveiled. I sat at the adult table, not out of pride, but strategy. Small talk buzzed around us. Retirement plans, choir rehearsals, Isolde's charity work, and then with a clink of her glass, she stood. "I just wanted to thank everyone for supporting my new initiative," she said, beaming. "The Isolde Hope Foundation for Women in Recovery." Applause, camera flashes, my mother dabbing her eyes. "The startup funds came from the estate," Isolde added casually. "My parents believe in what I'm doing, and I'm honored to carry the family legacy forward." I stared at my wine glass. White droplets clung to the rim like evidence. That money, part of it was mine, or was supposed to be. "You'll never be part of this," Isolde had taunted at a past event, her words now a theft unveiled. "You're stealing my future," I thought, my resolve hardening like steel. After lunch, I began gathering dishes like I always had. My hands moved on autopilot, collecting forks, stacking plate. But just as I reached for the last glass, my father appeared beside me. "Don't worry about it. Isolde's got it now." Like I was an intern whose contract had ended. "Of course she does," I said softly. As I turned, Isolde leaned in, breath warm against my ear. "You're lucky I let you come today." "You're burdened, Seraphina." Her voice hissed from a past argument, now a blatant challenge. "You're nothing to this family," she whispered, her voice a venomous dare. That was it. I needed to breathe. I needed space. I excused myself and headed down the hallway to the guest bathroom, the one I'd painted for them 7 years ago during Mom's recovery. Still smelled like lavender sachets and pine saw. I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, not from age, but from effort unnoticed. Flashes came, images, not memories. The time I sold my vintage record collection to cover Isolde's tax lien. The New Year's I skipped Sedona because Dad needed a new transmission. The way Mom had cried when I gave her a used Honda after her surgery, and how she told everyone at church it was Isolde's idea. I opened the cabinet to grab tissue and noticed a thick envelope tucked between old coupons and expired ibuprofen. My gut clenched. I pulled it out. It was an invitation. Cream cardstock with silver edges. Founder's Dinner. Honoring Isolde Hope Thornton as sole legacy bearer of the Thornton family vision. The date, next month. I sat on the toilet lid, reading it again. They were throwing a banquet on family funds to celebrate rewriting history, to toast her for stealing what I built. And they weren't even subtle anymore. I flushed the toilet without using it, washed my hands slowly, and opened the door. Isolde stood in the hall, chatting with someone about guest lists and salmon or steak. I walked right past her. No pause, no confrontation, just a whisper. "I hope you enjoy the last meal where no one questions your lies. You'll choke on your deceit," I added under my breath, my voice a vow of reckoning. "Your empire's crumbling," I thought, my resolve a blazing fire. I didn't wait for a reaction. I didn't need it, because I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry, but I was going to change everything one document at a time. The next morning came with no alarm. I was already awake. I had barely slept, but I didn't feel tired, just focused. It was a strange kind of clarity, the kind you only get when there's nothing left to lose. I called in a personal day from work, telling my supervisor I needed to handle some family paperwork. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. After a quick coffee and a moment to check that the documents were still in my tote bag, I headed downtown. The drive to the county courthouse was quiet. No radio, just the hum of the road and my own pulse in my ears. The line at the records office was mercifully short. I filled out the form for public property records. feeling the sweat bead under my shirt as I wrote my name. I handed it over with a polite smile, then sat down to wait. 12 minutes later, a clerk called me up and slid a folder across the counter. Inside were the recent deeds and legal filings tied to our family properties, including the desert cabin up in Red Rock Valley. That cabin had always been a dream. My father's father built it by hand, and every summer growing up, it was where we escaped Arizona heat and family tension. I used to believe if we were ever going to heal, it would happen by that desert, but the paper in my hand said otherwise. There it was, a quitclaim deed dated just 4 months back, transferring the title solely to Isolde, signed, notarized, and stamped. At first glance, it seemed legitimate, but then I saw it. The signature line, Desmond T. Thornton. The loops were off. The slant was wrong. It was almost, but not quite, his writing. I didn't need a handwriting expert to tell me what I already knew. I'd seen that signature before, years ago, on a school permission slip when Dad had been in Tucson on a work job. Mom had signed it, mumbling he'd say yes anyway. Back then, I thought it was harmless. Now, I wasn't so sure. I printed 2 copies, placed them gently in my folder, and left the building with a numb sort of calm. I didn't rush. I didn't text anyone. Instead, I called Mr. Sterling, our family's former estate attorney. He'd retired 3 years ago, but still kept a home office on Saguaro Avenue. When I told him what I'd found, he hesitated, but agreed to see me that afternoon. The moment I walked into his sunlit study, I felt 14 years old again, holding Dad's hand during a will update. Mr. Sterling had that kind of presence, firm, quiet, trustworthy. He listened carefully, didn't interrupt once as I laid out the documents. Then he picked up the deed, adjusted his glasses, and frowned. "This signature, it's off," he muttered. I nodded. "I think it was forged by my mother." He didn't look surprised. "I've seen this happen before," he said slowly. "But what makes this interesting is your father created a contingency trust in your name 12 years ago." I blinked. "A what?" "A trust," he said, "that activates if he's declared incapacitated or if there's credible evidence of financial manipulation. This document, if proven false, could trigger it. You've been their target," Sterling said, his voice heavy. "But you're not defenseless." "They underestimated you," he added, his eyes fierce with conviction. "Show them their mistake." The room went still. Would that override the current will? I asked. "If the trust is valid and the trigger conditions are met, yes," he said, "you could effectively reclaim legal control of a large portion of the estate." I left his house with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. Shaky, but steady. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. Instead, I called a mobile notary and a handwriting analyst. I didn't want a courtroom yet, but I wanted to be ready. I wanted truth documented, verified, and prepared like armor. Back at home, I carefully scanned every page into a secured cloud folder. I named it Thornton Archive. Just typing it made me want to vomit. That night, as I sipped water and stared out my window at the darkening sky, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Mom. I didn't press play right away, just watched the screen pulse. Then curiosity got the better of me. I listened, her voice strained. A little softer than I remembered. "Seraphina, please don't make a big deal out of this. We've all moved on. Just be grateful Isolde's willing to manage things." It was said in that syrupy tone she always used when she was trying to guilt me back into submission. "You tore our family apart," her voice accused in a past call, now a manipulative lie. "You're breaking our hearts," she'd pleaded last winter, her words now a hollow guilt trip. But something in me stayed still and solid. "No," I whispered aloud, placing the phone screen down on the table. "Not this time." I reached for my email. I hadn't spoken to Lorelei Vance in years, not since we'd worked on that community housing initiative together. But I remembered her steel spine, her calm fire, and the way she made a county clerk backtrack on a missing document with one phone call. In the subject line, I typed, "Client name, Seraphina Vance, breach of trust and property, fraud inquiry," and I hit send. I spent the entire night preparing not just documents, but myself. My black folder lay open on the kitchen table. every page placed in order like ammunition for a silent war. I didn't pace, I didn't cry. I reviewed, read, reread. Then I packed it up, zipped the case, and ironed my blouse until it held no wrinkles, just like my tone would, just like my resolve already did. By noon I was in my car, pulling up to the driveway of the house I used to call home. The mesquite tree still leaned left just slightly, like it was bowing toward the sidewalk. I noticed that the wind chime Mom loved so much had been replaced with a new one, cleaner, sharper sounding, made of crystal instead of brass, like they decided to start fresh without me. I parked slowly, no honk, no rush. My steps across the driveway were measured, heels firm against the cement. And when I rang the bell, it was Isolde who opened the door, already smiling like she'd won. She wore ivory, not cream, not beige. Ivory like this was some kind of coronation. "Glad you could make it," she said sweetly, stepping aside. "We're all waiting in the living room. You're wasting your time." Her voice echoed from a past taunt, now a desperate facade. "You're nothing to us." Her eyes seemed to sneer, her smile a venomous mask. I said nothing. Inside, the room was staged like a tribunal. Dad sat in his usual recliner, arms crossed like this was a minor dispute he'd have to referee. Mom perched on the edge of the couch, hands neatly folded in her lap like she was hosting a book club, not facilitating a betrayal, and there on the coffee table lay a folder, not mine. Isolde reached for it the moment I sat down. "This," she said, "is just a formality, a final draft of the division agreement. It's been reviewed by a third-party mediator." I held up a hand. "Before you go any further." I unzipped my case and began laying out my documents on the glass. 1, 2, 3. Quietly, deliberately. Isolde's mouth twitched. "This is the original living trust," I said, "dated 6 years ago with both parents' signatures." Silence. Mom shifted. Dad looked older, somehow smaller. "And this," I continued, "is a notarized copy of the property deed transfer filed last month." The notary? I slid over a highlighted printout. "Registered to Veronica Hale." "I think you remember her, Isolde." "You betrayed me," I said, my voice steady but cutting. "You forged their trust. You stole my legacy," I accused, my voice raw. "But I'm taking it back." No one spoke. "And this letter," I said, placing the final sheet flat on the table, "is from my attorney, confirming that these transactions, every single one, can be contested, and that fraud, especially involving forged signatures, is grounds for civil and criminal action." Isolde's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing. You're nothing without me." Her voice hissed from a past jab, now a crumbling defense. "You're pathetic, Seraphina." She spat, her voice venomous. "You'll regret this." I didn't flinch. "Then take me to court." She scoffed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "You're vindictive, Seraphina. You always have been. You ran off to college and came back thinking you were better than us." I tilted my head slightly. "I came back because no one else was willing to remind you that I didn't need your permission to exist. You stole my life," I said, my voice cold. "But I'm taking it back. You erased me," I accused, my voice raw. "But you can't erase the truth." My voice didn't rise, but it cut. Mom gasped, not in shock, in fear. She clutched Dad's hand. He didn't squeeze back. "You never said you didn't want the estate," she said softly. "You were always so sensitive, we thought Isolde could handle things more quietly," I finished. "More compliantly." "You erased me," I accused, my voice raw. "But you can't erase the truth. You chose her over me," I said, my voice trembling with hurt. "You broke us." The room stilled. Just then the phone buzzed. I clicked on speaker. Lorelei's voice poured into the silence, calm as a winter lake. "This is Attorney Lorelei Vance. If we don't have confirmation of mutual resolution by Tuesday 9:00, we will proceed with a formal petition for injunction and review of all assets in question. I trust that's clear." No one responded. I stood. My palms weren't sweating. My knees didn't shake. I had rehearsed every step of this moment, but I didn't need to fake it anymore. As I turned to leave, my eyes caught something on the shelf behind me. A photo frame. That old family trip to Flagstaff. The photo inside showed only 3 people, Mom, Dad, and Isolde. But I remembered that day. I was there. I took the picture. I had set up the timer, propped the camera on a cooler, and run into place. I reached for the frame and popped it open. Behind the doctored image, the real photo remained, folded and hidden. There I was, right there between them, grinning, arm wrapped around Dad's shoulder, sun in my eyes. They hadn't erased me completely, just tried. I refolded the picture gently and put it in my bag. "You tried to bury me," I whispered, my voice a quiet triumph, "but I'm still here. You'll never silence me," I thought, my resolve a blazing fire. What they tried to bury, the truth had quietly protected. And as I walked out, the only sound behind me was the tap of my heels on the hardwood floor. No voices, no protests, no more lies. The morning air outside the courthouse was unnaturally still, like the world itself was holding its breath. I stood on the stone steps for a beat, watching the glass doors reflect the storm I carried inside. I adjusted the folder under my arm, took one steadying breath, and walked in. The courtroom wasn't grand, no polished mahogany or golden seals like in the movies. It was beige, bland, almost clinical. But, for me, it might as well have been a battlefield. My parents were already seated, dressed in muted tones that tried to say, "We're just confused elders," while Isolde sat, poised in a tailored navy blazer like she was running a board meeting. Her smirk didn't reach her eyes today. Not after what had happened in that living room. I took my seat beside Lorelei, who gave me a quick nod without looking away from her stack of prepared filings. Calm, calculated. Every word from her was like a scalpel, precise, intentional, and designed to expose what lay beneath. The bailiff called the session to order. When the judge entered, even Isolde's posture stiffened. She wasn't smiling anymore. And then it began. After formalities, the judge turned to Lorelei. "You may proceed with your opening summary." Lorelei stood and, without preamble, played the audio recording. My heart thudded like a slow drumbeat in my chest. The sound came through the courtroom speakers, slightly muffled but unmistakable. Isolde's voice laughing, then Mom's chiming in. Dad's quieter but still there. Manipulated the dumb youngest one. "She won't check. She just wants to be loved. You erased her," Lorelei's voice echoed in my mind, now a courtroom reality. "She's nothing to us," Isolde's recorded voice sneered, now a damning confession. The silence that followed was the kind that wraps around your throat. You could almost hear people blinking. The judge leaned forward. "This recording has been verified." Lorelei nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Time-stamped, authenticated, and obtained legally by a third party who was present in the household at the time of the recording." Isolde shot to her feet. "That's taken out of context." "Sit down, Miss Thornton," the judge said sharply. "This court does not tolerate grandstanding." I didn't look at her. I didn't need to, because that clip wasn't just a revelation, it was confirmation. Everything I had feared, suspected, silently carried. It had been real, and now it had been heard. My parents, they didn't even turn their heads toward me. That hurt more than anything they had said. But it wasn't over. I opened my folder and pulled out one final page. "This," I said, rising to address the room, "is the part they forgot." Lorelei handed it to the clerk, who passed it to the judge. "It's a clause written into the original family trust," I continued, "signed by my grandfather before he passed. It grants me full veto power over any family asset transfer made before I turned 38. "And when is your 38th birthday?" the judge asked, flipping through the document. 3 days from now." The judge looked over his glasses. "Then, as of 3 days from now, the contested assets cannot be transferred without your express consent." I could hear Isolde's breath hitch. She turned toward our parents. "You knew about this?" she hissed. "Did either of you even read it? You betrayed me." Her voice echoed from a past accusation, now turned against them. "You failed me," she spat. her voice raw with desperation. "You let her win!" Mom's face was pale. Dad rubbed his forehead like it might erase the room. But I wasn't done. From my coat pocket I pulled something crumpled, but sacred. The tiny origami dove. Faded, worn at the wings. My grandfather had taught me how to fold it one quiet Sunday in his garage. Then he'd taken it and tucked it into his wallet, telling me, "You're the one with wings, remember that?" It had been returned to me after his funeral, folded inside the cream envelope. I placed it on the table. "This is my legacy," I said, my voice steady. "You can't steal it." "You tried to crush me," I thought, my voice silent but resolute. "But I'm soaring now." That little bird had traveled through years of silence and paper trails, and now it landed right where it was meant to. The courtroom hushed as the judge finalized the interim ruling. Effective immediately, a freeze is placed on all transferred estate assets. Probate records will be reopened for review. A formal investigation into misuse of family funds is authorized. Isolde slumped back in her chair. My mother opened her mouth, perhaps to plead, perhaps to manipulate, but the judge raised his hand. "You've had your say." I turned to leave. As I passed them, I didn't flinch when my father looked away, or when my mother whispered, "Seraphina, please." I stopped just for a second. "This wasn't revenge," I said without turning around. "It was restoration." "You broke me," I whispered silently, my voice a quiet triumph. "But I'm whole now." "You lost me forever," I thought, my resolve a quiet fire. And with that, I left. Not storming out, just walking forward, finally unburdened. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled into the driveway of my grandfather's cabin. No, my cabin now. The title deed bore my name alone. But I wasn't arriving like a victor. I wasn't here to gloat. I was here to breathe. The cabin still looked much the same from the outside, save for the new coat of paint and the trimmed cacti. But inside, everything felt stilled. Not empty, just full of memory. The kind that wraps around your ribs and asks if you've really healed or just learned to carry the ache better. I let myself in and shut the door gently behind me. It was quiet, save for the faint creak of the wood floor as I walked across it. The scent of sage still lingered, faint and warm, like the memory of a hug. I placed my keys on the entry table and ran my hand along the old bookshelf where my grandfather used to line up his leather-bound ledgers and astronomy journals. Each room still held a trace of him, a man who never raised his voice but left echoes deep enough to carry through decades. This space hadn't forgotten me, even when my family had. I wandered into the kitchen, now brighter after the renovation, granite counters, updated cabinets, but that same window above the sink where he used to hum while rinsing chiles from the garden. I stood there for a moment, letting the morning light hit my face, and felt something shift. Not closure, just stillness. And in that stillness, a fragile peace. The knock at the door startled me out of my thoughts. I walked back and opened it to find Mrs. Carver, the neighbor from 2 cabins down, holding a weathered envelope. "Found this in the mail slot at the old church mailbox," she said, adjusting the thin scarf around her neck. "It's for you." "Looks old." I took it, my fingers already recognizing the handwriting. My grandfather's. Back inside, I sat down on the living room armchair, the one that still creaked in the same spot it always had, and opened the envelope. The letter was dated just 6 days before he passed, his words in careful loops spilled across the page like a quiet hand on my shoulder. Seraphina. If you're reading this, then the winds must have shifted. I feared they might. People forget what's fair when fear gets involved. I've always known your heart. It's why I chose you, because you'd protect, not possess. Speak softly, but stand when it matters. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always knows where to land. Love always, Papa. I folded the letter back slowly, sealing the moment into my chest like a keepsake. "You saw me," I whispered, my voice a tribute to his faith. "You believed in me," I thought, my heart heavy with gratitude. A quiet exhale escaped me. Not relief exactly, more like release. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from Mom. I didn't press play right away, just watched the screen pulse. Then curiosity got the better of me. I listened. Her voice strained, a little softer than I remembered. Seraphina, we didn't know how much you meant until you walked away. Maybe we didn't want to. I don't expect you to forgive us. I just hope you're okay. You betrayed me. Her voice echoed from a past plea, now a hollow apology. We failed you, her words now admitted, but too late to mend. There were no tears in my eyes, just a long, hollow breath. I wasn't angry, not anymore, but I wasn't ready to open that door again either. Some things don't need slamming to be closed. Later that afternoon, I walked upstairs to what used to be his study. I'd turned it into a reading room with cream curtains and a shelf of books he would have loved. On the mantel, I placed something small and delicate, my folded dove. It wasn't just paper. It was the part of me they tried to erase, the child who folded hope into corners, who stayed quiet because she thought love had to be earned. She lived here now, proud, whole. You're my legacy, I whispered, my voice a quiet vow. You taught me to stand, I thought, my heart a quiet tribute. I didn't burn bridges, but I wasn't rebuilding them either. Down the street, a group of kids raced past the gate, laughing. One girl, maybe 11, chased a paper bird twirling in the breeze. I didn't smile, not fully. The victory wasn't sweet like I'd imagined it might be. It was heavy, tinged with the ache of what could have been. I'd reclaimed my place, but the family I'd fought for was gone. Not just in legal terms, but in the quiet spaces where trust used to live. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and paused. No goodbyes, no announcements, just the weight of the desert sun on my face. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore, but I wasn't free of their shadows either. The cabin was mine, the legacy was mine, but so was the scar of their betrayal. Sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't mean shouting. It means walking forward with your dignity intact, even when the path feels lonely. This story wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming worth after years of being overlooked, about learning to live with the pieces of a family that broke you. Because family doesn't just mean shared blood, it means mutual respect, and I'd found that respect within myself. Have you ever had to choose yourself even when it hurt? If stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button for more real-life family drama that speaks to the heart. And don't forget to share your thoughts below. I read every comment. I am Seraphina, I whispered to the empty air, my voice a quiet anchor, and I am enough.